Good evening. Welcome to this webinar from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Fairfax, Act for Climate Today, or ACT. My name is Eric Goplerud. I'm one of the leaders of ACT. I think Pope Francis framed the issues that Dr. Ted Barnett and the rest of us will be discussing today in his encyclical Laudato Si. The Pope said, "The Earth's resources are being plundered because of the short-sighted approaches to the economy, commerce, and production. The loss of forests and woodlands entails the loss of species, which may constitute extremely important resources for the future, not only for food, but also for curing diseases and other uses. It is not enough to think of different species merely as potential resources to be exploited, while overlooking the fact that they have value in themselves. Each year sees the disappearance of thousands of plant and animal species, which we will never know, which our children will never see, because they have been lost forever. The great majority become extinct for reasons related to human activity. Because of us, thousands of species will no longer give glory to God by their very existence, nor convey their message to us. We have no such right." I'd like to turn to Loretta Rowe, who will introduce our speaker this evening.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Dr. Ted Barnett, for being our speaker tonight. It's a privilege to introduce him. Dr. Ted Barnett is the founding president and board chair of the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. He earned his Bachelor of Science from Yale, his MD from Tufts, and in 1984 became board certified in diagnostic imaging. In 1995, he became one of the first physicians board certified in vascular and interventional radiology. And 22 years later, in 2017, again a pioneer, Dr. Barnett became one of the first 204 physicians certified in lifestyle medicine. He, his wife, and 3 children have thrived on an exclusively plant-based diet since 1991. Although still actively practicing in the high-tech field of radiology, he is thrilled to be able to help people heal with the low-tech field of lifestyle medicine. And we are thrilled that he is here with us tonight. Welcome and thank you, Dr. Barnett.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it's great to be here. And I see in the attendee list a number of my friends out there. I won't actually be able to see you, so I'll just have to know you're there. I'll be basically talking by myself here. I'm sitting out in my gazebo in Western New York, and now I'm going to share my screen. So welcome, everybody. I'd like to talk about food as medicine for humans and the planet. And Loretta's already given my certifications there, so I'll keep moving here. That circle, that's we call that our wellness wheel. And you can see we've got 9 spokes on our wheel. And the first 6 are actually the pillars of lifestyle medicine as promulgated by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So a predominantly plant-based diet, physical activity, avoiding toxins, getting restful sleep, managing stress, and cultivating strong relationships. And that we have added, at RLMI, we've added 3 more: enjoying nature, finding purpose and meaning, and then also finding joy. So tonight's schedule, I just want to let you know what we're going to be talking about for the next hour or so. We have a presentation until about 8:30 and then about 30 minutes for discussion. And we have 2 goals for tonight. The first goal is I want to persuade you that a whole food plant-based diet is best for your health. We sometimes abbreviate that WFPB. And my second goal is to persuade you that a WFPB diet is best for the planet. Now, what I've done is I'm going to be interweaving the 2 parts of what I've said there. So sometimes we'll be talking about whole food plant-based diets. Sometimes we'll be talking about what's best for the planet. And all right, so this is a quote from Wendell Berry, who said that people are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. So Wendell Berry is one of my heroes. He's a farmer, philosopher, poet, and just a real great thinker and very thoughtful. I think it's one of my favorite quotes. And let's see here. I'd like to share with you a little video called Your Last 10 Years.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide.
So a very powerful video. I don't know how many of you have already seen that, but it's available at that website there. Just a little bit about Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. Our mission is to establish lifestyle medicine, especially the adoption of whole food plant-based nutrition as the foundation for health and the healthcare system. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We're supported by grants, donations, volunteers, and program fees. We do have a paid staff, but my wife and I are both full-time volunteers, and I still work as a physician. I just wanted to talk about something called the Triple Aim, and this was an article published in 2008, and basically it said that medicine needs to have what we call a triple aim, and the idea is to have improved population health, improved quality of care and patient experience, and then also to lower cost of care. And then somebody else said, well, what about the people delivering the care? What about clinicians? So maybe we should have a quadruple aim. So they added this improved clinician experience, and that's actually pretty important now because we have a lot of physician burnout. People in healthcare in general are under a lot of stress and they are burning out. And so we have to think about them as well. Then somebody said, well, what about a quintuple aim? So what about environmental stewardship? So again, we've got the optimal outcomes, the optimal patient experience, reduced cost, improved provider experience, and now one more, environmental stewardship. So that's kind of what we'll be talking about a lot tonight. And so we went from triple to quadruple to quintuple, and not to be outdone, we've come up with our own octuple aim. And so we work directly for individual health and well-being. So we have programs that help help patients directly. We also work directly with physicians to increase their joy of practice and help them with their own self-care. And also somewhat less directly work for population health and well-being. And then down at the bottom, we're talking about what we're indirectly working for. So indirectly, although it's very important to us, we're working for planetary health, environmental sustainability, and compassion. There was an article that came out in the medical journal Lancet in 2019 called the Eat Lancet report, and it talks about food in the Anthropocene, which is the period that we live in now, which is basically human influenced era in geologic history. And so the idea was to consider healthy diets from sustainable food systems. And Walter Willett, who is a professor at Harvard and a leader in the food world and the nutrition world, said transformation to healthy diets by 2050 will require substantial dietary shifts. Global consumption of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes will have to double, and consumption of foods such as red meat and sugar will have to be reduced by more than 50%. A diet rich in plant-based foods and with fewer animal source foods confers both improved health and environmental benefits. So this is the next chapter in this report, Our Food in the Anthropocene, Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems. Without action, the world risks failing to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, and today's children will inherit a planet that has been severely degraded and where much of the population will increasingly suffer from malnutrition and preventable disease. Food is the single strongest lever to optimize human health and environmental sustainability on Earth, they go on to say. And their goal is to achieve planetary health diets for nearly 10 billion people by 2050. because that's what we anticipate the population will be by 2050. So just to reiterate, the Eat Lancet report sets out 1 goal, 2 targets, and 5 strategies. The 1 goal is to achieve planetary health diets for nearly 10 billion people by 2050. The 2 targets are healthy diets and sustainable food production. So having people eat in a way that promotes health and having a food system, food production system that is sustainable. And then there are 5 strategies to reach that. Seek international and national commitment to shift towards healthy diets. Reorient agricultural priorities from producing high quantities of food to producing healthy food. Sustainably intensify food production to increase high quality output. Strong and coordinated governance of land and oceans. At least half food losses and waste in line with UN Sustainable Development Goals. So you can see those 5 strategies are a bit of a problem because that's going to require a lot of cooperation between countries and states in our country and just people generally. And we know from recent experience that cooperation is something that humans have a bit of a problem with, but we're hoping that we can work toward this by developing some system of cooperation. Then I'd like to just talk about the 9 planetary boundaries as promulgated by the Stockholm Resilience Center. So if anybody's seen the movie Breaking Boundaries, that's what's being referred to here. And the 9 boundaries are biosphere integrity, climate change, ozone depletion, ocean acidification, land system change, freshwater use, biogeochemical flows, in other words, nitrogen and phosphorus flows in the biosphere, which is mostly fertilizer, atmospheric aerosol loading, and novel entities such as pesticides, plastics, and chemical pollutants. Now, this is the graphic that they use to kind of demonstrate that. And the boundary is this dotted line. So if it's green and inside the boundary, that's a good thing. So for example, ozone depletion, we haven't crossed a dangerous boundary yet. We actually, that was a good example of cooperation among countries where we were able to reduce the use of CFCs and cut down the things that deplete the ozone layer. And so the other areas are climate change, where we've kind of crossed that boundary. Biosphere integrity, so this is extinctions. We've gone way past the boundary on extinctions. Land system change, we've crossed the boundary. Freshwater use, we're still in the safe zone. Well, you get the idea. And so how many of these systems would be improved by moving to a plant-based diet and possibly avoid crossing the boundaries? So that's what I want us to think about tonight, is what about our food can help us not cross those boundaries, or if we have crossed the boundaries, go back into the safe zone. So global warming and climate change, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations says that animal agriculture generates more greenhouse gases than all forms of transportation combined. There's pollution of land, water, and air. Animal agriculture is a leading cause of ocean dead zones, habitat destruction, loss of rainforest, and species extinction. As far as biodiversity goes, the United Nations Environment Program issued a report on the role of the global food system in biodiversity loss. And according to them, there are 3 levers to reduce species loss and protect biodiversity. The first is land set-asides. The second is sustainable farming methods. And the third is moving toward plant-based diets on a global scale. So again, there's that plant-based diet issue. And what we have now basically is a food factory in reverse. We're generating incredible amounts of animal food, especially corn and soybeans, which we feed to animals. And animal foods use vastly more water, land, and fuel than plant foods. The same amount of protein and calories could be generated from plant foods such as beans, seeds, and grains. Plant foods contain other nutrients lacking in animal foods such as fiber and antioxidants. And it's better for the planet, it's better for you. So we know we have an epidemic of chronic disease in this country. More than 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese. More than half of Americans have at least one chronic disease. Right now, it's predicted that for children born after the year 2000, over 1/3 of them will develop adult onset diabetes. Right now, for Americans over the age of 65, 25% actually have the type 2 diabetes. So if you try plant-based, you can reduce your cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood sugar. And later on, I'm going to show you how. And also, you'll be able to lift your mood and your energy. And it's delicious too. It's not really a sacrifice. So this is a graphic from the Planetary project showing how many people can be supported by the equivalent of 2 football fields on the standard American diet. And it's basically 1 person. per year can survive on the production of those 2 football fields. If we switch to a plant-based diet, we can feed 14 people with the same amount of land. You may be hearing birds in the background. I can hear them. If everyone in the world ate a plant-based diet, 5 billion football fields worth of land could be returned to forests. So I'd like to talk to you about a program that uses a whole food plant-based diet, referred to as it's called the Esselstyn Program because it was developed by Caldwell Esselstyn at the Cleveland Clinic. And it's the same diet that Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute teaches in our 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart, which I'll be telling you about later. But first, let me tell you what the Esselstyn Program is. So first, we need to talk about cardiovascular disease and atherosclerosis. So this is a diagram that shows cross sections of arteries. And you can see on the left, there's what's called a normal lumen. So that's what it looks like if you cut through a normal artery. You see this big white area in the middle is the lumen, meaning that's where the blood would be flowing. This little black line here is the endothelium. Those are the endothelial cells. This reddish area is the muscular wall of the artery. And then over here, we have a very diseased artery. And you can see the lumen is this little tiny thing down here. So this is what happens in advanced atherosclerosis. If it happens in the heart, you develop angina. If it happens in the brain, it can cause a stroke and decrease blood flow to the brain. But this is the type of plaque that causes angina because this has taken a long time to evolve. This is not likely to cause sudden death if this is in the heart, because if this lumen were to close over, this person has already developed a number of collateral vessels around this obstruction. So it might actually turn out to be a non-event because they've developed these arteries, basically their own internal bypasses. Now, this type of plaque is the kind of plaque that causes sudden death. So here's an artery that's got a little plaque on the wall. And this plaque is more like a pustule. The last one, I'll go back to that. This last one is made out of calcium, or it's got calcium in it. It's made of scar tissue and cholesterol, but basically it's really pretty solid and it's not likely to change a whole lot. But this is a soft plaque that's got mostly cholesterol and inflammatory cells under this thin layer of endothelium. And all you need is some kind of an event, like the person is stressed or they eat a high-fat meal, and it can develop this little crack. It's called a rupture. And once that little crack develops, then a clot develops on that. The force of the blood pushes this out, and then you get this complete blockage of this artery. And because this plaque was not causing any significant obstruction, this person has not built any collaterals around this. So they really have no way of getting blood to the part of the heart, the myocardium, that's been normally getting supplied by this artery. And so this is what causes sudden death. They develop an arrhythmia, part of the heart stops working, and they just keel over. This is what causes sudden death. So let me just go back one more time. This is likely to cause angina. So if you have trouble getting to the mailbox, you stop a few times on the way and your angina starts, it stops. But this is the kind where you could do a treadmill test and have a completely normal treadmill examination with a plaque like that, because basically the lumen is pretty wide. But then when that cracks open and suddenly clots, that's when you develop a big problem. This is just a diagram that shows endothelial cells. These little hexagons are not all little hexagons, but they're this nice thin layer. And this lines all of the arteries and veins, honestly, in your body. There's about 40,000 miles of blood vessels in your body, and a huge amount of surface area. So when you consume food or inhale something, it goes right into your bloodstream and it goes right up against those endothelial cells. And those endothelial cells can be damaged by all kinds of things in our environment and in our food. And if they get damaged, then you end up with the kind of disease I showed you earlier. Now, this is an abdominal aorta that's been cut open, and you see it's nice and shiny and smooth. And that's how it should normally look. These are the legs down here. These are the iliac arteries branching off down here. There's the celiac axis and superior mesenteric artery. And then these are little arteries that branch off to the spine. This is what an aorta looks like that's got severe atherosclerosis. This would be what you'd see in typical American abdominal aorta, or anybody on the standard on the Western industrial diet. So so what if this stuff were growing on your face? This is what I ask people. If this were on your face, you would go to the doctor instantly. You would never let this happen. But because it's on the inside, you don't really know about it. It's insidious. You just let it happen, and then you don't even know about it until you develop symptoms. So once again, a little comparison of what the two look like next to each other. There's the nice, smooth, glossy, glistening endothelial cells, and this is what happens when you are on years of an industrial diet. So who is Dr. Esselstyn? Caldwell Esselstyn was a surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic for over 35 years. He's retired now. A member of the Board of Governors, president of their medical staff, former president of the American Association of Endocrine Surgeons. He got an Olympic gold medal in 1956, Bronze Star as an Army surgeon in Vietnam, and he's also the first recipient of the Benjamin Spock Award for Compassion in Medicine. I tell you all that to basically explain that this is not how what he was known for. His diet was not what he was known for when he was coming up through the ranks. He was a surgeon, not necessarily warm and fuzzy guy, but he said, we have all these people with heart disease, and I think I know how to fix that. So the Cleveland Clinic is a place that's well known for all kinds of cardiac interventions. And so he was able to get patients who basically the surgeons had given up on. And so that's how he was able to start his program back in the late 80s. And what is the Esselstyn plan for eliminating heart disease? Foods to include vegetables and lots of greens. We have our patients consuming greens all day long. Legumes, whole grains, and fruit, but no nuts and no oil. So in other words, no high-fat plant foods, and definitely no oil. In our programs, we never want people consuming oil, but we do talk about adding some high-fat plant foods such as nuts, avocados, and olives. Now, these are the foods to avoid. Anything with a face or a mother, meat, poultry, fish, and eggs. Dairy products, oils, including olive oil, canola oil, all so-called healthy oils. There's really no such thing as a healthy oil. There are some oils that are not as bad for you as others, but there's no reason to have oil in your diet anyway. If you think about it, if you have a garden anywhere on the planet, there's all kinds of great foods you can pull out of the garden, but one thing you're not going to get out of your garden is oil unless you process it or squeeze it out of its natural package. Refined grains, you want to avoid those. Whole grains are great. And you also want to avoid nuts, including coconut and avocado, and avoid all processed foods and foods with added sugars. Now, I've added a little asterisk down there. Some nuts are probably beneficial for most people. So his program was developed for people with severe coronary artery disease who were really symptomatic and had no options basically open to them. The surgeons wouldn't operate. There was really no way to put a stent in. So they did the most drastic thing. They changed their diet, and actually they got better. Most of them are still alive, and this was started quite a while ago. So this is one of Dr. Esselstyn's colleagues, a surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic. His name is Joe Crow. He was age 44 at the time this picture was taken. He succeeded Dr. Esselstyn as the chairman of the Breast Cancer Task Force. And he said, it was Friday in November 1996. I had operated all day. I finished, said goodbye to my last patient, and got a very bad headache. It hit me in a flash. I had to sit down. A minute or two after that, the chest pain started. It radiated up my arm and shoulder and into my jaw. So what was happening? He was having a heart attack. Young guy, only 44 years old, but he's at the Cleveland Clinic, which if you're going to have something going on with your heart, that's a good place to be. So they wheeled him down to the angiography lab. They did a coronary artery angiogram that showed his problem was inoperable and that a stent was also not feasible because it was distal in his left anterior descending coronary artery. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, some people would say it's a bad thing because they couldn't fix him, but he survived. And the good news is they didn't do anything to him. They didn't put a stent in, they didn't operate. 2 weeks later, he and his wife went to the Esselstyn's house for dinner. And they immediately embarked on the Esselstyn plan. His total cholesterol dropped from 156 to 89, and his LDL dropped from 98 to 38. This is all without medication. So Dr. Esselstyn talks about heart attack proof. If you can get your total cholesterol under 150 and your LDL under 80, then we consider you to be heart attack proof. It's obviously not a guarantee. There's no guarantees in medicine, but those numbers come from the Framingham Heart Study, a long-term public health study that's been going on in Framingham, Massachusetts for many, many years. Now, what did his artery look like when he went to they took him to the angiography lab? and that fateful day in 1996, it shows the left anterior descending artery, or the LAD, otherwise known as the widowmaker. And you can see it's highly irregular and narrowed. And then he went and had another angiogram less than 3 years later. And what do you think it looked like? So it looked like this. This is the same area. So this plaque has now completely resolved. Now that's pretty amazing. That can happen. When I was in medical school and my professors talked about plaque in the arteries, I thought it was concrete. I didn't think it was going anywhere. But it turns out that most plaque can at least get somewhat better. Now this got a lot better, probably because he's only 44. There was very little scar tissue, very little calcification in there. It was basically almost all inflammatory tissue, and it was able to completely resolve. So that's great. He's got a normal vessel now. So how fast does the Esselstyn diet work generally? That was about a little over 2.5 years, I think. So we have some less invasive studies for examining coronary artery blood flow and myocardial perfusion. And these are examples of PET scans. And this is basically normal after treatment. And this is 3 weeks earlier. You can see that, by the way, red is good. So the apex of the heart is down here. And you can see here, the apex of the heart is not getting any blood flow during stress. So the patient's been put on a treadmill. This is basically a stress test. And you can see that this is severely ischemic. And after 3 weeks, it's much better. In fact, it's basically normal. Here's another example of a patient, pretty much normal after 12 weeks. At baseline, this is called the lateral wall. So lateral wall ischemia within 12 weeks has now basically resolved. This is after treatment, 6 weeks after baseline. You can see there's still a little bit of what we call a completed myocardial infarction in the inferior wall. But previous to that, there was ischemia in the septum of the heart and in the inferior wall. And 6 weeks later, it looks fantastic. So, and of course, the most important thing is how are these patients feeling, and what are their symptoms like? And so these people are able to get, their angina tends to resolve. You can see this is after 3 weeks after treatment, pretty much normal, and it's severely ischemic area here and here as well. So that's pretty quick. That's just a few weeks to a few months. And you can also see people's cholesterols tended to drop dramatically as well. So this is an article from 2008 in the journal Circulation called Preventing Heart Disease in the 21st Century. And by the way, I just want to let you know, this is the main journal of the American Heart Association. This is not some fuzzy off journal. This is their main journal called Circulation. And the conclusion of the article in this journal: the goal of eliminating 90% of coronary heart disease is feasible with control of the major established risk factors beginning in youth. So regardless of what we're recommending, look what they're saying: 90% of coronary heart disease is avoidable. It can be eliminated. I think it's actually higher than that, but they're claiming 90%. I think they're being a little conservative. They say the cultural and societal changes necessary to achieve this goal won't be easy, and they won't happen soon, but it's time to start. So in other words, the disease that kills more people in this country than anything else, coronary artery disease, is basically optional, that we could basically eliminate it with cultural and societal changes. So now we're going to go back to talking about the planet. How are we going to feed 10 billion people by 2050? Well, sustainability. Turns out that industrial animal agriculture is in the top 2 to 3 most significant contributors to the world's most pressing environmental issues, such as water use, air pollution, and loss of biodiversity. Remember, I showed you the 9 boundaries and how much industrial animal agriculture affects all of those. Animal agriculture is responsible for a higher share of greenhouse gas emissions than the entire transport sector. And remember, it's not just carbon dioxide, it's also methane and nitrous oxide, which are even more potent greenhouse gases than carbon dioxide. What about efficiency? It takes about 9 calories of food fed to a chicken to produce 1 calorie of chicken meat. 75% of agricultural land is currently used for raising and feeding livestock, yet it only provides 1/3 of the global protein supply. What about safety? Animals in the United States consume more than twice as many medically important antibiotics as all humans do. And based on current trends, medical experts expect 10 million annual deaths from resistant microbes by 2050. So this is a nice graph that just shows how land is used on the planet. And this is from the Good Food Institute, and they got it from Our World in Data, which is based on UN statistics. Anyway, the Earth's surface is about 29% land, about 70% ocean. And of that land, 71% is habitable. The rest is glaciers or barren land. And of the habitable land, 50% is devoted to agriculture. The rest is forests, shrubs, and then a little bit for urban and freshwater here. Now, of the agricultural land, 77% is used directly by livestock, and 23% is used for crops. And for just looking at protein, only about a third of the protein supply comes from livestock. The rest comes from plants anyway. And hopefully in the discussion, we can talk about how protein from plants is just as good as animal protein. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's better. You don't need animal protein at all. And then in terms of calories, although livestock occupy about 3/4 of the agricultural land, they only supply about a fifth of the calories. So about a third of the protein and about a fifth of the calories come from livestock, which is occupying over 3/4 of land on the planet. This is a really interesting map. I love this. It shows how much of the United States is committed to cow and pasture land range. So a large amount, rest sheep, goats, and others, and horses. You can see, let's see, urban and commercial is this little pink strip over here. There's a little place for tobacco and flowers. This is available from Bloomberg.com graphics if you want to take a look at that. It's from 2018. It's really fun. Corporate timberland and private-owned timberland. This is all timberland over here. I noticed there's a little square here about Weyerhaeuser. Actually, my roommate in college was George Weyerhaeuser, and they used to say that 1% of the land was owned by his family, and now I guess it's true. So animal agriculture is one of the most significant contributors to the most serious environmental problems at every scale, from local to global. That's from Livestock's Long Shadow. Now, let's talk about another disease. What about prostate cancer? We talked about heart disease, which is the leading cause of death in this country. What about cancer, which is the second leading cause of death in this country? The last couple of years with COVID, I'm not so sure about what the leading cause of death is anymore. But anyway, let's go back 2 years and let's talk about prostate cancer. So this is actually a randomized control trial, was organized by Dr. Dean Ornish, who developed the Ornish program, which is a program for treating heart disease that's very similar to the Esselstyn program. And he worked in concert with the Department of Urology at UCSF and Sloan Kettering. And what they did was they had 93 men with biopsy-proven prostate cancer. They had a biopsy that demonstrated a prostate cancer, but it was a low-grade prostate cancer. And their PSA was between 4 and 10, and their score of severity was less than 7. And so all patients chose to do watchful waiting for reasons unrelated to the study. Now, watchful waiting is a traditional treatment for prostate cancer because it's a very slow-growing cancer that, although it can be very aggressive in some people, and most men is not aggressive, and they're usually going to die from something else before their cancer does them in. So watchful waiting is a very reasonable approach. And so they were randomly assigned to this intensive cardiac rehabilitation or usual care. Intensive cardiac rehabilitation in the Ornish world is low-fat vegan diet with exercise and stress reduction. So this is something that Dr. Ornish developed back in the late 80s. He published a paper back in 1990 about their program. It was a randomized control trial showing that arteries would open up on his program. And that was a randomized control trial. This is a randomized control trial looking at prostate cancer. So how did they do? So we had half the men were put into this program of going on this basically a cardiac rehab program, and the other half were just told to eat a regular diet. So in terms of the PSA, the prostate specific antigen, which is a marker of prostate cancer, the control group got worse. The experimental group got better in terms of their PSA. And that's also correlated with the degree of adherence to the program. So the more they adhered to the program, the better they got. They had, I'm sorry, so actually this gets me every time. The high adherence is over here. This shows how much their PSA drops, actually. So the more they adhered to the diet, the better they did. The less well they did, the less they adhered, the less well they did. But basically, it just shows the more you adhere to this diet, the better it will be for prostate cancer, And we know this to be the same for other chronic conditions as well. I'm just going to skip through this quickly, although it does show that prostate tumor cells grown in a culture that contains serum of men who've been on the experimental diet will show a significant decrease in growth compared to the control group. And I'm just going to skip that slide as well. This is a more dramatic slide. I like imaging. This is an MRI. This is the prostate gland. This black thing is the rectum with air in it. And this red thing is the tumor. And so this is an example of a man who at baseline had a tumor about that big, and his PSA was 6.4. And after 1 year, his PSA had dropped to 4.5, and his tumor was considerably smaller. So what ended up happening with these gentlemen? Well, none of the experimental group patients had to have any intervention, but 6 men in the control group had to have conventional treatment during the first year. So in other words, the PSA went up or the tumor grew, so the surgeons had to do some kind of intervention, whatever that intervention was. So this demonstrates that going on a whole food plant-based diet, which is basically what the Ornish program is very effective against prostate cancer. So here's an uncontrolled, non-randomized experiment. Like any good parents, we decided to perform an experiment on our children. In 1991, we decided to become vegan, but more about that later. So let's talk about our 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart, which we based on the Esselstyn program, and it's a program that we've been running since 2018. We developed it with the idea that there would be a low barrier to entry. It's very inexpensive and it's easy for doctors to order. It's enticing to patients. It's only 2 weeks long, and we tell people, "You're a grown-up. You can do anything for 2 weeks. See what happens." It's a rapid demonstration of value. There, you can do anything for 2 weeks. It's fun. We do it as a group. We're on Zoom now. It's affordable, and it's easy for physicians to order. Also, it helps to counteract misinformation and disinformation. There's so much conflicting information out there that people don't know what to believe. So they find out because it happens in their own bodies. Patients get to see for themselves. And on top of that, we wanted to develop a program that was reproducible for research and demonstrations, because one of the problems with lifestyle interventions is that everybody uses a slightly different intervention. And so people really don't know, gee, which program should I use? I have patient with disease X. Is your diet going to work? Well, it turns out that pretty much the same diet works for almost every chronic condition that we see in this country. And so we developed a program that we thought would help with most of those. It can be used as a standardized research tool. We like to think it's like pouring pills out of a bottle. Why should the pharmaceutical companies have the advantage of having something that you can have uniform treatment with, and you can have a placebo that's, looks like their pill, but has nothing in it? So our 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart is Zoom-based and medically facilitated. For the sake of this discussion, we're just going to talk about the ones we do on Saturdays. We do have other start days, but it's 3 Saturdays, 1 Sunday, and 3 Wednesdays. We have a day -3, a day 1, a day 2, a day 5, 8, 12, and 15. It's a total of 11 hours of interaction. The first, what we call day -3, there's an overview and a shopping list. Day number 1, there's an introduction. We get together and watch some videos and have small and large group discussions. Then on the second day, we have a cooking class video with discussion. Then we have a check-in on day 5 where people get to talk about how it's going for them, because day 5, they've now been on this program for 5 days. How are you feeling? Are you going through withdrawal? How's your energy level? Day 8, we have a virtual potluck with a discussion, and that's usually on a Saturday. Day 12 is another check-in, and then day 15 is graduation. We get together and watch a video and have small and large group discussions again. So how do people do? Well, first, let me just show you what that looks like on a Zoom call. I mean, we're all on Zoom right now. Zoom has been revolutionary, and we didn't expect to be doing this on Zoom, but because we were doing it in our office until early 2020, and then the pandemic came along, and we had to pivot. So here, answer to my question: how do people do? Average results over the 15 days. So the average loss of weight is about 6 pounds. For people whose BMI is greater than 30, it's about 7 pounds of weight loss in 2 weeks. Blood pressure tends to improve dramatically, especially for people whose blood pressure is over 140. A systolic drop of almost 17 points. On average, it's about a drop of 7 points. This is one that gets me excited every time. It's the total cholesterol. The average drop is 26 points, but 44 for those with cholesterol over 200. And oftentimes we see much higher drops of 80, 100, even more. LDL cholesterol also drops very dramatically in 2 weeks. So about 19 points on average. And if your LDL is over 100, it's likely to drop 33 points on average. Fasting glucose also gets better, especially if you're in the diabetes range. So this is a patient example. We had a 61-year-old gentleman present in September 2018. And his doctors were, excuse me one second. You can see my clock there. Doing all right. Okay. His doctors were saying, you got to go on medication for your diabetes. You're out of control. Your hemoglobin A1C is 13.6. A normal hemoglobin A1C is 5. Anything is under 5.5. You're considered to have diabetes if it hits 6.0. But he wasn't on any medications. Now, hemoglobin A1C is a great measurement because it tells you your average blood sugar over the last 90 days. So hemoglobin A1C of 13.6 means his average blood sugar has been in the 300s for the last 90 days. Very, very high. Normal blood sugar is under 100. So he enrolled in our September Jumpstart. And by December, his hemoglobin A1C was 6.0. It's still not on any medications. So, you know, people who go to their doctor are told with diabetes are told chronic disease, you're never going to get better. You're going to eventually go on medications, eventually insulin, and have all these terrible complications. Not true. So by July 2019, his hemoglobin A1C is 5.4. He's lost 70 pounds. If he went to the doctor now, they'd say, you don't have diabetes. You never, you know, because 5.4 is normal. It's under 5.5. It also has a ripple effect. We ran into him in 2020. He said he's doing well, and his wife's dress size has dropped from 22 to 14. So he also influenced his wife. What about cholesterol drop? Well, our record cholesterol drop was in a 50-year-old woman with chronic kidney disease, and her total cholesterol was 299 at baseline. After the 15-day jumpstart, her total cholesterol was 149. It dropped 150 points. So this is something we've had to educate doctors about. It's worth getting laboratory results fairly frequently, not every 6 months or a year. If you're going to make a change in your lifestyle and your diet, you can justify getting blood tests every 2 to 4 weeks. I call it motivational testing. It really helps people see how they're doing. It can be motivating. It also can help people stay on track if they know they're going to be tested. So this is a married couple, local ER doctor and a local pediatrician who became experimental subjects back in, I think, 2019. He has a strong family history of heart disease at a young age, and he wanted to reduce his risk of heart disease. So the two of them enrolled in the 15-day jumpstart. They actually got their labs at 14 days because they wanted to present them at an event on day 15. So the results are going to be for 14 days on our whole food plant-based jumpstart. And remember I talked about heart attack proof? Well, here it is again. Heart attack proof is to get your total cholesterol under 150 and your LDL under 80. So Julie's already doing pretty well. She's got a total cholesterol of 148 and an LDL of 71 on no medications. So she's basically already heart attack proof. Dustin's got a problem here. His total cholesterol is over 150, it's 187, and his LDL is over 100. It's obviously well over 80, but 100 is what we officially recommended. We like to see people under 80. And we know that he's at high risk because of his family. So he really wants to get that down. So how did they do after the 2 weeks, or the 14 days actually? So Julie's cholesterol dropped from 148 to 112, and her LDL dropped from 71 to 46. So this is to show you how dramatically things can happen when you do change your diet for somebody who's already basically pretty healthy. Now, what about Dustin? So his total cholesterol dropped from 187 to 139. So he got that under 150, and his LDL dropped from 126 to 83, almost down to 80. So I congratulated him and said, I think you're doing pretty well. If you stay with this diet, I don't think you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke. So where are the randomized controlled trials, or RCTs? Because that's one of the criticisms we always hear in lifestyle medicine. And so this is an article that was published in the British Medical Journal back in 2003, called Parachute Use to Prevent Death and Major Trauma Related to Gravitational Challenge, Systematic Review of Randomized Controlled Trials. Now, I'll tell you right off the bat, this is done tongue in cheek. This was the article. Those are the pictures in the article. Let me just tell you I'm going to go back here. Well, actually, I'm going to go forward because this is the summary. So Parachute Use to Prevent Death and Major Trauma Related to Gravitational Challenge, systematic review of randomized controlled trials. And they were looking for randomized controlled trials of parachute use. And they looked for studies that showed the effects of using a parachute during free fall. And the major outcome would have been death or major trauma. So that's the title of the article. And their conclusion is, as with many interventions intended to prevent ill health, the effectiveness of parachutes has not been subjected to rigorous evaluation by using randomized controlled trials. And let me just go back and show you why. Results, we were unable to identify any randomized controlled trials of parachute intervention. Nobody wants to be in the experimental group. And if you do a crossover trial where you first get to be an experimental group where you get to use a parachute, and then the control group where you don't have a parachute, obviously everybody's going to die. So you're not going to do that. And that's what happens with lifestyle medicine. It's not that lifestyle medicine doesn't have great results. It's just you can't use randomized controlled trials easily. So this is not to say that there are no good studies demonstrating the power of food in preventing and treating disease, and we can certainly talk about that during discussion. But there are just very few randomized control trials. I did show you the one with the prostate cancer, and Dr. Dean Ornish did an earlier one on heart disease. And then the Predimed study was looking at the Mediterranean diet. It was a big study, but I don't think it was done very well. Of course, there are no double-blind randomized control trials. People know when they're being fed plastic broccoli. So one thing is you can't do like the pharmaceutical companies can do. They can give you a placebo because you don't know what's in the pill. But I can't give you a placebo whole food plant-based diet because you'll know you're not getting that. So it's what we're up against when we're trying to persuade people of something that's pretty obvious. It's like parachute use, right? It's obviously helpful and it works most of the time. Like you just have to use different standards. These are just articles about our Jumpstart that we've had a couple of publications about that helped us to get certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And now I want to show you a video. Let me just turn off my sound.
If you suffer from the side effects of pharmaceutical commercials, including nausea, headache, vomiting, frequent trips to the pharmacy, or an overdrawn bank account, then Waffipen may be right for you. Side effects for Waffipen may include curing type 2 diabetes, reversing heart disease, weight loss, cholesterol reduction, easing of stress, lower blood pressure, reflux abatement, erectile function, clothing size reduction, regular bowel movements, smiles, vacations, good health, and children with puppies. Ask your doctor if Waffipen is right for you. Whole foods, plant-based nutrition. Maybe our ancestors did know the secret to good health.
That is available on YouTube if you'd like to see it. You search for Waffipen. I think it's actually on our YouTube channel. So you could just go to Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute. This was made a while ago back when we were a .com or a .org. We've always been a nonprofit, but we changed our website. So another quote from my favorite, Wendell Berry: "Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts." There's a lot going on in the world now, and it can be easy to give up, and that's not going to help. We just all need to soldier on, and one of the best ways to keep moving is to be joyful and to whatever that takes. So let me ask you some questions. What if, from a health standpoint, the diet we recommend is only equivalent to and not superior to an animal-based diet? Are there other reasons? Our current animal-based system of feeding humans is unsustainable. The Earth can support only 2 billion humans eating this way, and we have 7 billion, and we are growing. It contributes more to global warming than any other source. It's responsible for massive ongoing deforestation. In the Amazon, 70% of once forested land is used for grazing. It's responsible for unspeakable cruelty to animals. Worldwide, 50 billion animals are killed each year, 2,000 every second. In the US, farm animals raised for food consume 90% of the soybeans and 80% of the corn. Animal-based agriculture uses vast amounts of water, causes massive water pollution, and is responsible for ocean dead zones, as all the nutrients on farms run into the ocean and end up in the the Missouri and the Mississippi and run down into the Gulf of Mexico. There's a huge dead zone there, and there's other dead zones around the world. Industrial fishing is destroying marine ecosystems. It's completely unsustainable, and fish farms are no better. Just an example of a hog farm waste lagoon in North Carolina, and when they have hurricanes and floods, these things this pollution ends up in the waterways. There's really no way to get rid of it other than to spread it on farm fields, which pollutes the neighborhood. So think about our mother. She is in your hands. And so is he. And you don't need legislation, permission, or a big investment. You just need to buy and eat different food. It's not rocket surgery. And finally, is it realistic to raise a family entirely on plants? Remember that experiment I told you about that we embarked on back in 1991? What happened to those kids? Well, here they are in 2016, all plant-powered since 1991. They're all still doing great. He's about to turn 30. He's our youngest. And she turned 33 today. That's Elizabeth. And Rebecca's 35. And still all healthy and active. And that's one of my best, I think it's the first time I ever photobombed a picture. Anyway, nothing of any real positive social value has ever been achieved from the top down. It's always been achieved from the bottom up. Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States. So if this is going to succeed, we have to start at the grassroots, working at the bottom. And that's my presentation. So thank you very much. I am going to stop sharing and look forward to seeing my co-panelists reappearing. It is 8:29.
Well, this has been a great presentation. And there have been several questions which have come up in the Q&A, and I can read them, or probably you could read them just as well as I could. One question that came up was a person who is on a diet like you had described, but is unable to eat all nuts, legumes, soy, whole grain, most fruits, and many vegetables. With all these restrictions, is it possible to eat a healthy animal-free diet?
It is. We know people who are on the FODMAP diet. I assume you have irritable bowel syndrome or something along those lines. I can't go into all the details right now, but the answer to that is yes. And resources would be nutritionfacts.org, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, and possibly my wife could type something into the chat. Let's see, at the very end there. So, yeah, and as you see, Jonathan Shalene had to go. Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, so the answer to that question is yes. And perhaps Carol could put something in the chat for some more resources.
That's terrific. Thank you. One of the real challenges is that this has become really politicized. It's a left-right kind of issue. How do we talk about this to people who may not be all that keen about climate change, animal husbandry, all this kooky left-wing stuff?
Sure. So great question. We're really trying to appeal to people's self-interest in terms of health. So, a significant number of people in this country have one or more chronic illnesses. I mean, for people over 65, almost everybody's on some medication. 25% have type 2 diabetes. So people are interested in getting better. Now, they may say, well, I want to go on the keto diet or the paleo diet. I don't want to go on your fuzzy plant-based diet. So that's one of the reasons we came up with such a short program, is because you can find out really quickly whether we're telling the truth or not. So people go on our 15-day whole food plant-based Jumpstart. We run one every month. Doctors all over the country are sending their patients through it. And the patients find out really quickly from observing the effects on their own bodies by how they feel, and also seeing how incredibly dramatic improvements they can see in their lab numbers. So they can find out whether we're telling the truth very quickly. And so that's what I would recommend to somebody who is having doubts about this. As far as the environmental aspects, I think that's a bit of a harder sell because I think it's harder to demonstrate to an individual. But certainly in terms of your own health, from a purely selfish standpoint, and it's not really all that selfish. We need to be around for our family and to be healthy. We also want to set an example for our children because kids in this country are growing up with incredibly unhealthy diets and lifestyles, and so we need to set an example for them as well. So that would be my answer: is to send them all to our Jumpstart, which is sort of self-promoting. Although we are a nonprofit, we don't make any money at this, but we do run some other programs that are longer than the Jumpstart. But that's kind of the quickest way to find out.
So just to do a summary in my layman's terms,
sure.
The focus is on health. The outcomes are you're going to feel better physically and emotionally.
Right.
And we're not talking left, right, liberal or libertarian. We're talking about health.
Right.
So that's terrific.
Yeah,
I had a question which may be more of a medical question, which is if a person is both on the diet and they're also on cholesterol lowering medication, what symptoms might they have as they need for their medication decreases?
Sure. Yeah. Interesting question. So when people go on our program, we warn them about two things. If they're on blood pressure medication, they may have to reduce their blood pressure medication because it's dangerous to have low blood pressure. If people are on medication for blood sugar, like metformin or insulin, then they may have to lower their medication because it's dangerous to have a low blood sugar. But it's not dangerous to have a low cholesterol. So in fact, if you're on cholesterol lowering medication during the program, we want you to stay on it because if you come off of it, your cholesterol may go up, even though really it came down, but because a cholesterol medication can do such a good job of lowering cholesterol, it can go up even as you go on this diet. So we like people to stay on their cholesterol medication. There are no side effects to having low cholesterol. There are side effects to being on a statin. A lot of people will have muscle aches. A surprising number will say, I couldn't take it because my muscles hurt too much. Then there's also liver damage that can occur with statins. But for people who can tolerate statins, I don't have a real problem with them. But I do think a better way to get your cholesterol down is the natural way with this diet. And oftentimes people will do both.
That's terrific. Also, I want to point that Brian has put a number of comments in the chat, okay, including links to the Jumpstart program. A question came up: do I have to go to Rochester? Which is probably not a bad thing in the summer, but I wouldn't want to go there in the winter.
Okay, so yeah, you don't have to go to Rochester. So the question is, how do you get there? So we used to do it in our office. We did it every month in our office. We bring 24 to 30 people right in. And they were actually our patients. They went into our electronic health record. And so that's kind of how we got good at it. And we were actually in the process of licensing the program to doctors around the country, which would have been pretty difficult, but there were a lot of doctors who were interested. And then the pandemic came along and we thought we might have to fold. But then we thought, well, why don't we just try this crazy Zoom idea? And so we switched to Zoom. And to be perfectly honest, in a lot of ways, it's better now. The only disadvantage is we can't get the labs as easily. So it used to be on day number, we would do finger sticks, and when people came in on the first Saturday, we get a finger stick, give them their cholesterol, their blood sugar, their whole lipid panel. And on day 15, we do the same thing when they came back. Now we would only meet 4 times. We met 3 Saturdays and then the first Sunday for the cooking demonstration. Now we meet 7 times over the course of 18 days, because even though we say it's only 15 days, we have a day -3 to help people get ready. And initially that getting ready was because we didn't think people understood how to use Zoom, which was true at the time. But now pretty much everybody's
we're all experts.
Yeah, exactly. After more than 2 years, we're all Zoom experts. So, but we still use that day -3 to help people get ready to go shopping, figure out their menus, so that on day number 1, which is that first Saturday, they can really hit the ground running. But yeah, you can just go to our website. I see the link is in there, and we run them every month. And this month we're actually running 2 overlapping ones. One is entirely for a deaf and hard of hearing cohort. So we have interpreters for that. And then the other one is for people who can hear normally. And we tend to get between 40 and 60 people in every in every cohort. It's been rising pretty steadily. So we're hoping it'll get higher. We're working with doctors all over the country. And the beauty of it now is instead of having to set up their own program where they would need 15, 20 people at a time to make it work, if they just have one patient, they can just say, hey, go sign up for it, tell me, and come back to me when you're done. So it's a lot simpler now.
A question was asked, what, and this may be a medical, which you want to say, talk to your doctor, but one of our questioners said that he or she have been on this basic plant-based diet and their cholesterol still remains very high.
Mm-hmm. So I would, I don't want to put that person on the spot, but I would ask, if I could, I would ask you a number of questions. First, I'd like to know how old you are, and how long you've been on the whole food plant-based diet, if you're having any symptoms of high cholesterol, heart disease, stroke. And also then I would want to do a food diary, because it is pretty unusual for people who follow our Jumpstart to not have their cholesterol go down. In fact, it's if their cholesterol doesn't go down, it's pretty much an indication that they're not following the program. It may not go down 40 points, but it almost always goes down at least 10 points. Yeah, so I would want to talk to that person directly. There are, depending on where they live, there is an organization called Plant-Based Telehealth. They're licensed in all 50 states. And so you could look that up. We partner with them, but we don't make any money from them. We're not connected in that way. So you could check out Plant-Based Telehealth and have a conversation with one of them, or you can join us on one of our Jumpstarts, which is only $199, and you'll get it's not really medical care, but it's pretty individual when we can go through those things on a Zoom call.
That really sounds terrific. I think we've kind of gone through the questions that have been raised, and we're a little bit over the hour that you had promised us. I don't want to, ask for any more than what you've already given, and thank you. But if there are additional questions, please put them into the Q&As. And I certainly want to turn to Loretta Rowe and Bob Root to see if they have any additional questions or summary that you want.
Well, I am curious. 2017, there were 204 physicians board certified in lifestyle medicine. I'm wondering what that figure is today.
I don't know the exact number. It's up to about, I think it's over 1,000 now. It's been given since 20. And by the way, we committed to an hour and a half. So.
Okay. Okay. I didn't want to push too hard.
I appreciate that. This almost never gets done in an hour, which is I figured. So anyway, but I'll stay as long as people need to. The question was about how many are certified in lifestyle medicine. It's a couple. It's quite a few now. So if you want to find out for sure, the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine has a website. They're connected to the International Board of Lifestyle Medicine. So one of those websites should be able to tell you. I will tell you that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and I was on the board of, I just rolled off for the board of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine after my 3-year term. When I first joined over a dozen years ago, we had 130 members, and now we have over 8,000 members, and we're getting a couple of hundred a month are joining from all over the world. So people are recognizing not only the power of lifestyle medicine, but the importance of it for so many reasons. And so many of us do it. We're passionate, not just because we want to help people, but because we want to help the planet. In fact, back in 1991, when we made the change as a family, I basically did it for environmental reasons. I said, we're raising a family. I'm going to study the diet from the point of view of a physician. And all I have to do is demonstrate to myself that it's no worse than the diet I'm on. It doesn't have to be any healthier. But for the sake of the planet, it's really important to stop eating animals and using their, their secretions and their eggs. So getting away from eggs and dairy is just as important as getting away from flesh. And that was my only criteria. It's got to be just as healthy. Then as I'm studying it, I'm realizing, oh my goodness, it's even healthier than I could have imagined. It's the healthiest diet there is. In fact, I had what I call a sloping forehead moment when read the work of Dr. Dean Ornish, and he talks about how difficult it is to get funding for anything related to lifestyle interventions because there's no money in it. You can't, there's really nothing to sell. Well, pharmaceuticals can get incredible amounts of money for their research, because if you come up with a blockbuster drug, you can make billions. And so it's worth their investment to spend lots of money. And many of the medical schools and the research departments are supported by pharmaceutical companies. There's not many that are supported by the broccoli industry.
Sorry.
Yeah. So that's when of course I get it. So, and that's what I was talking about when I was showing that article about the parachutes and the randomized controlled trials for parachutes. Does that mean we need to do a study? I don't think so. I think we know what the outcome would be without doing it. And so that's where lifestyle medicine fits in. We just have to have other standards. And it's an incredibly difficult task getting the payers to recognize it, getting doctors to recognize it. And we could go into that. But anyway, what other questions do you have?
I had another one.
Sure.
That their Faunalytics has done some research and says there are more ex-vegans than current vegans, in a big proportion, a large proportion, majority, I think, are people who went vegan quickly for health reasons. And I'm wondering, also the other thing is that a number of friends of mine who have had cancer have reported that they've been told by their physicians they have to eat red meat. And I'm wondering what's happening,
Yeah, so well, let me answer this. Well, the first question about the ex-vegans, I don't really know what the numbers are about that. I'll believe you that somebody has that statistic. I do know that the number of people who are actually declaring themselves to be vegan is growing dramatically, and also the number of people who are declaring themselves to be whole food plant-based. You go into a room now and say, how many people have read the China study by, Colin Campbell, and many people will raise their hand and say that was just totally changed their lives. But your question about the patients with cancer, so if they, we're always held to the standard of where the randomized controlled trials. I guarantee there are no randomized controlled trials saying that people with cancer should eat red meat or any kind of animal product. I guarantee it. And there are studies now that show that people who go on a whole food plant-based diet will have a lower recurrence rate of their cancer. I demonstrated that with prostate cancer. I showed you that article. That wasn't a randomized controlled trial. Studies are have been done and are ongoing for women with breast cancer in terms of recurrence and metastases and overall longevity, and a whole food plant-based diet wins out over the standard American diet. So every time we do a study, it shows that plants work better. I don't really know of any studies that have shown that plants make it worse. So
it's how to respond to the people who are listening to that advice, which is what you're saying exactly.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. There are a number of oncologists now who are starting to get the message. Not very many. And it may not just be the oncologists, maybe they're dietitians and their nurses that they're working with. So tell them about for the people who aren't feeling well on a vegan diet, ask them to come through our Jumpstart. We've got so many people who've gone through it, who have been vegan for a long time and say, wow, I finally get it now. This is actually working. I feel great. I'm losing weight. My cholesterol is coming down. Because they weren't, they were just, you can be a junk food vegan, right? You can live on potato chips and soda, and that's a vegan diet. That's not going to make you healthy.
One of the, I'm a policy guy. So Loretta and I sometimes go back and forth between individual decisions and trying to influence large numbers of folks.
Good.
Have you had any experience either working with school systems or with corporations or other larger groups? How can we affect? So, yeah, this is an individual decision about diet.
Sure.
But how do we impact, the 350 million living in the U.S. or the, 7 or 8 billion around the planet?
Yeah. So that's a big question. We could spend a couple of days on that one.
Well, figure you got 13 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. So there's different approaches. We like the bottoms up approach. You can do bottom up in a big way, right? It doesn't have to be, you can reach a lot of individuals now through Facebook and social media. And we have what we call the cycle of culture change, where we're trying to establish a positive feedback loop. So we had a grant for $50,000 a couple of years ago from the local accountable care organization that connected to the University of Rochester. And we said, we want to put 40 of your doctors through our plant-based nutrition class. At the time, we're teaching a class in person. It was 12 CMEs. It was over 6 weeks. We wanted 40 of your doctors to go through that class. We'll put them through it for free. And in exchange, they'll send 5 of their patients to Jumpstart. And it worked. So we had doctors learning from their patients. Well, first of all, the doctors would learn about it because they would do the course themselves. They would feel better. They would say, wow, because doctors get sick too, right? They would have the benefit of have this healthy diet. Their blood pressure would come down, their cholesterol would get better, and they would lose weight and feel better. Then they would have their patients go through our Jumpstart. The patients would go back to the doctors and say, I feel great. And the doctors would then tell other doctors, the patients would tell other patients. And now you're developing this word of mouth that can really spread out. And that can happen pretty fast. Now, that's not to say we're not working with organizations. We do work with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. We provide a number of free resources to them. So all of our CME programs are free. We have a 24 CME program that includes going through our Jumpstart, actually. So that's one of the things that we have that's unique, is that doctors can actually go on a Zoom call with our patients and do the Jumpstart with the patients, and they can see how well the patients are doing. They can see how it affects them, and they get credit for it. They can also learn how to run a group medical visit, because that's another way lifestyle medicine is going to take off. Is with stuff we don't have to explaining it one-on-one during a patient visit is a waste of time. It's the same thing over and over and over and over. It's much better to get 3, 4, 5, 10 people in a room and have a group medical visit, and the doctor can get reimbursed significantly better, because right now, if you want to make money in medicine, you don't want to be a primary care, and also you'll be miserable, right? Because you have to see 4 or 5 patients an hour. It's horrible. But if you can spend an hour with 5 patients, have a good time, really be successful at persuasion, and also get paid for it, so you can support your office and your staff, then that's going to take off. So reaching a lot of doctors is one of the ways we leverage this. We also try to, we're trying to work with self-insured entities. The insurance companies, believe it or not, are the worst. Insurance companies are not interested in saving money, right? Because they make money on every transaction. If healthcare costs come down, they make less money. So they're not really interested. So, but you work with a self-insured entity like a corporation or something like that, who they're on the hook for their healthcare costs. They have an incentive. Now, we haven't had a lot of success with them. If you know anyone, we're happy to work with them. Brian Bell, who's on this call with us, is our director of healthcare alliances, and he is very happy to reach out to anybody, any of those organizations. But we're also happy to reach out to medical groups. We are actually starting to work with a medical group in the Washington DC area to running our Jumpstarts. But it's pretty small at this point. As you said, there's 350 million people out there, and we haven't reached a lot of them yet. So far we've reached 1,300 with our Jumpstarts. But we have big plans.
In reaction, I think, to my question,
Right.
Somebody put into the chat that we have Amy Hamlin online, who's the executive director of Healthy School Food, who is working to get schools to adopt a more plant-based diets for the schools.
Right. Yeah. Somebody put in yay, Amy. Absolutely, yay, Amy. She's working in New York City and other schools. But as you know, what's happened in New York City is we got Eric Adams promoted from president of Brooklyn to now the mayor of all of New York City, and he is a totally plant-based himself. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Google Eric Adams and look up some of his videos about how he looked 5 or 10 years ago and how he looks now and how much healthier he is now. He basically was dying of diabetes. He was overweight. He was losing his vision, and was getting numb in his hand and his feet. So it really saved his life. And so he's trying to make up. He's pushing a lot for plant-based nutrition in schools, but it's being pushed along by Amy. So I don't know if we want to.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if we can unmute Amy.
Amy, you want to come? Amy, you want to come? Bob, you want to promote Amy? So while we're waiting for, I know she's not shy, although maybe she's shy today. Anyway, well,
Well,
yeah.
there are the questions about
Sure.
even
Oh, there-
2.5 years of using Zoom, we still are not
Here she
experts
is.
at it. Oh, okay, great. Okay. Amy?
Amy, hello.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hey,
don't get to
sorry
see-
I
we don't
can't
get
show
to
my
see-
face,
Okay. All
but
right.
great presentation. Yes,
you.
I'll put it in the chat. I'll put our website. There is a section there where you can learn how school food works and how to create change in your school, and then we can help strategize about how to best do that, because each school district is different, and so there's different considerations. But that's what we're here for, to help schools change. And we get healthy vegan food on the menu, and we provide nutrition education for the students, their families, and all the adults who work in the schools for health, the environment, equity, and animal suffering reasons.
Great.
That's really terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Please put that into the chart.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity to say something.
Absolutely. Amy's doing amazing work. We've known Amy for decades now, I think. Somebody in the Q&A asked, you mentioned the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. How does your Jumpstart program differ from that of Dr. Neil Barnard? So it's actually quite similar. So the Physicians Committee has a 21-day kickstart. There's Jumpstarts, there's kickstarts. Theirs is the kickstart. Theirs is all online. There's no live Zoom interaction. It's something you do basically on your own or with friends or relatives. So, but we teach very similar things. Theirs is not I don't believe it eliminates the high-fat plant foods completely the way ours does for the 2 weeks. So so really we just differ about the high-fat plant foods. Theirs is also no oil diet. And as far as the high-fat plant foods go, we tell people that after you go through the Jumpstart, you may want to add back in some high-fat plant foods, but you do that cautiously after you've already found out what your cholesterol has done, because you may be somebody who needs to stick with basically the Esselstyn program. And the Esselstyn program has had such good results, and it's really hard to do a randomized control trial. We don't know for sure that giving up the nuts is essential, but it does seem to be pretty important in terms of cholesterol control for those people who have really symptomatic heart disease and are kind of at the end of the rope. There's people who on their 10th, 15th, or 20th stent, and there's just no room in their coronary arteries for stents anymore. They go on this, and all of a sudden they don't need them anymore. So those are people you would not want to mess around with nuts and olives. Okay, this is not worth it. Why try it?
I noticed that Paula Telsic asks, does the Esselstyn diet require vitamin B12 supplementation?
Sure. So B12, absolutely. Pretty much everybody over the age of 50 in this country should be taking a B12 supplement anyway. We recommend 1,000 milligrams a day. You can't really overdose on it. If you do go on a totally plant-based diet and there's no contamination in it, because B12 is in soil, it's in untreated water, it's on fruits and vegetables that haven't been totally sanitized. There is B12 pretty much everywhere, and you need very little. You only need 2 micrograms a day. It's kind of a long story about why you take such big. If you only need 2 micrograms, why do you take 1,000 micrograms? If we have time, I can talk about that. But you really can't overdose on it, and it takes about 3 years to become B12 deficient because you store a lot of it in your liver. So it's not an emergency if you go plant-based, but it's definitely something you want to do because B12 deficiency is a serious condition, and which is extremely easy to fix and to avoid. So yeah, we definitely recommend it. And it's not just the Esselstyn program; it's any of these totally plant-based programs.
Ted, the question on the proteins, if I could ask.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure you said that you can get all the proteins you need from a plant-based guide. I've read other places that there are 12 that you need, but one you can't get. There seems to be some inconsistency in what the protein situation is, and yet that seems to be one of the major concerns.
Right. Yeah. Protein is like the first question that anybody gets when they come out of our program, and we warn them, where do you get your protein? Right. So, So you saw that picture of our kids, right?
Yep.
They've been vegan pretty much all their lives. Nathaniel has been vegan since before birth, and he's taller than I am, and smarter than I am, and more talented, and he's been living on plants. So, that's an N of 1. It's not a randomized control trial, but it's pretty good evidence. All the amino acids that are found in animals are also found in plants. Okay, they're in different proportions. Sometimes people say, well, animal protein is higher quality because it more resembles our own flesh. So that somehow the implication is that, well, we've taken the right proportions. Well, your body's really good at figuring out the right proportions you need to incorporate in your own body. The other thing is that we have to get over this whole idea that what we're eating is for us. It's not for us. What we're eating for is our microbiome. All the little organisms that live in your gut. You want them to be happy. And they live on things that you don't incorporate into your body. They live on mostly all this fiber that's going down there, right? Fiber is of no use to your cells. It doesn't break down in anything that you can use, but it's incredibly important for your health because the microorganisms down there use that fiber for themselves, and they create something. They break down a lot of them break down the fiber into something called short chain fatty acids. I'll come back to the protein in a minute, but I'm going down the short chain fatty acid. Okay. So short chain fatty acids like butyrate, propionate, acetate, those are products that are created by the bacteria from what's called prebiotics or fiber. And why is that important? Because the lining of your colon is made up of these cells called colonocytes. And unlike all the cells in most cells in your body, what's their energy source? What's their fuel? They run on glucose. All the cells in your body, your brain runs on glucose, your heart everything runs on glucose, except for the lining of your gut. Your colonocytes run on short chain fatty acids, which is only there because the bacteria are making it. And so that's why we don't really know for sure, but we think that's why colon cancer is so prevalent on the industrialized diet, because people's colonocytes are not being fed the food they want. And so, yeah, so you're not really trying to eat things that are completely absorbable. You want to have a big poop, right? You want to have stuff. And you don't want
every day.
Yeah, every day, exactly. So going back to the protein, there's nothing in animal protein in animals there's no amino acids you can't get from plants. You only need to get maybe 7 or 8% of your calories coming from protein. The standard American diet is giving you, well, somewhere between 15 and 20% of calories from protein, a lot of protein. On the other hand, the person who's standing there with their soda and the bag of chips and saying, where do you get your protein? Well, there's no protein in the soda. And the chips is made out of, actually a white potato actually has 10% of its calories from protein. So it's more than the 7% you need just in a white potato, right? But when you add the oil to make it into potato chips, now it's only 50% calories. It's like
really?
you could become protein deficient in potato chips. So anyway, that's kind of, there's a long spiel, but we've hit 9 o'clock. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, that makes a nice transition. And tonight we've heard a lot about the relationship of food and health. And Dr. Barnett, thank you so much for sharing all of your research and your enthusiasm and real practicality of how diet has an impact on health and on the environment. So thank you so much. And the outstanding results that you were showing of the positive outcomes in the competency that you can have around your diet and lifestyle interventions and an impact on health. There's a tremendous need for leadership that you, Dr. Ted, have shared with us. And we really want to thank you for your generosity. This is the last of our Action for Climate Action webinar series for at least through the summer. We will not be doing these monthly webinars through the hot spell. Please consider joining us in the fall. And if you would be interested in working with us and our core group, please contact either Loretta Rowe, Bob Root, or myself, because the more that we are working together and the more that we have folks who are working with us, the more impact that we can have together. So again, thank you, Dr. Ted. Thank you for everyone for joining us. And we hope to have a very healthy summer, one in which we are moving towards more plant-based diets and greater health. and see you in the fall. Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Ted.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank
Good night.
you.